welcome to yet another edition of Facebook Live Sunday morning, where we do our Ask the Healthcare Advocate, all the questions that you would like answered. And I'm taking a break again, taking a break from Corona because just tired of talking about Corona. But I get this question a lot, so I thought I would focus briefly on why won't the kupah pay for medicine that I was taking abroad? For example, Humira, which is a specific medicine that is helped with certain autoimmune diseases, including Crohn's disease. It's an injection. Or Eliquis, which is a blood thinner. And a lot of people come from, especially mostly the United States, already have receiving that medication. And they wonder why such a pain, and why is it difficult? Why don't they just get automatically approved to get that medication here? So one of the things that I always explain to people is that there are first tier medications and second tier medications, meaning the first tier medications are medications that usually have been around for longer. They're known to get a certain job done and they're less expensive. And the kupah, because they are regulated by the Ministry of Health, which is regulated by the basket of services through the government, has a criteria about what medications will be covered when. And their goal obviously is to have the less expensive medications be the first go-to, and only then, if the medications don't work, then to go to the second tier medications, which were usually newer and more expensive, perhaps more efficient and more effective for your illness. But what did I want to mention is not necessarily, because how medications come into use in the United States is not necessarily based on best practices or based on the most effective for the illness that you have, but can be for just because that the pharmaceutical company has more of an interest in order to push that, and because the way that doctors are paid and reimbursed in America is very different than the way it works out in Israel. Meaning they sometimes get incentives to use specific medications, whereas not the case in Israel. The reason that you could have been prescribed that medication in America is not because it's the most effective for your illness, but because it was more expensive and it was beneficial to the system to prescribe that medication. So that is an important thing to note. Now, when you come here and you want approval, it doesn't mean that you won't get that medication, and you should apply for it, but you need to know that it is a second tier and not a first tier, which means you have to prove that either you took medications beforehand and they didn't work and then you were prescribed this, or you need continuity of care and that it would not be beneficial for you to stop receiving this medication after receiving it for X amount of time because it could be detrimental to your health. You need to prove that to the kupah in order to get special permission to get that drug if you are in the category of those who receive the medication but aren't eligible for it under the basket of services because you have a different diagnosis than the one approved in the basket of services. That's a long thing to say. If you didn't make sense to you, then please feel free to send me a comment or send me a private message and let me know, and I'll be happy to clarify for you specifically about your medication. But that's it in a nutshell, that you should know that there's a difference in payment and reimbursement for medications between the United States and Israel. And that's why often the more expensive medication that you were on won't necessarily be approved in Israel. It does not mean that your health care is less. It does not mean that that the government here doesn't care about your well-being. No, not in the least. It just means that there's a different system here, which also allows everyone now to get free vaccines, which is pretty impressive. So thank you so much for joining us for our little mini Ask the Healthcare Advocate Live, where I answer all your questions related to healthcare advocacy here in Israel and sometimes abroad. Feel free to send me a message, comment below, and stay with us next week, next Sunday.